I'm Bob again. On Monday, March 27th, Adam Duininck, Chairman of the Met Council, and Peter McLaughlin, Chairman of the CTIB and Hennepin County Commissioner, and others, held a news conference at the Minnesota State Capitol to talk about their concerns that both the House and the Senate Omnibus transportation bills would result in a need for very significant cuts to providing regular route bus service in the Twin Cities. Here is the news conference.
Good morning, everybody. I think we'll get started. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Adam Duininck, Chair of the Metropolitan Council, and thanks for taking some time today to be here. I want to particularly thank all of the allies behind me who are here to support the efforts of today. If you've seen me talk about transit in the last couple of years, as Chair of the Met Council, you've heard me say that transit is not about a system, that it's not about it's not about a certain project, but it's about a system. But I'm here today to not just talk about how it's about a system. I'm here to talk about how it's about people and how there's going to be real impacts to people's lives if either the legislative proposals in the House or Senate are taken up. Secondly, I just want to talk about how what we're really trying to accomplish here, again, why it impacts people, is because transit is about access to jobs and opportunity. The current proposal, particularly in the House, would have real impacts to real people and suffer significant cuts to our regular route bus service. There are other speakers that are going to talk to some of these other issues, but I want to highlight the regular route bus service, which is what the Council is in charge of running. Right now, after taking some deeper looks at the numbers last week, the legislature took out some of our general fund appropriation. We thought that they took out a little over $65 million, about $67 million over the biennium. They actually took out twice that amount from us. So which is why we felt a sense of urgency to really get a message out today about how hard those cuts and reductions would be. Devastating and harmful cuts. So I really want to highlight what that would be. Even if we did a fare increase, which is something that we have to deliberate and work through a public process, we would have to look at potentially 40% reductions to the service of Metro Transit customers. 40% reductions. Potentially 4 out of 10 buses could not be on the road, or we would have to look at significantly shrinking down service times and service areas. And again, that would hinder the access to opportunity for many people around the Twin Cities region. Furthermore, the budget would have significant impacts on Metro mobility. That's something that we are already facing, a $24 million shortfall, that if we do not get the funds to fund Metro mobility and other paratransit services we need to provide for the region. One, much of the region is required to have a federal mandate as well as a state imposed mandate for us to provide that service, and then by taking those funds away, will make it that much harder for the council and the region, the people of the region, to have those services. I just want to wrap up and start turning it over to other speakers. We're happy to be around and answer questions by saying, again, it seems as though there's been a lot of talk about support of bus. You know, when people are faced with potentially having to support a light rail project which they don't like, they say, well, we'd support the bus system. But this budget proposal does the exact opposite. This is a significant reduction to our bus service at a time when we can least afford it. And we really call on the legislature to get it right on transit. This proposal is a non-starter. So I'm going to turn it over to a couple other speakers. We have Cheslow Walker, who's going to speak to the impacts on the paratransit system.
Thank you, Chair Duininck. My name is Cheslow Walker. I chair the Transportation Accessibility Advisory Committee. I myself have disabilities. In 2006, I had a seizure while I was driving, totaled my car, lost my job, became disabled, and got diagnosed with epilepsy. I was living in the suburbs and couldn't adequately get to all of the places I needed and wanted to go every day. So I moved to the city and started taking the city bus. I lived without a car for a decade, and I got everywhere I needed to go every single day using the bus. My story and countless others of people with disabilities are affected by this cut every day. If this cut comes to fruition, most of the suburban metro mobility would be cut because the adequate funding in the federal mandate is not there to fund metro mobility in the suburbs. People with disabilities and seniors rely on transit every day to get to where they need to go, to get to their jobs, their work, their social life, their medical appointments. And we need Metro Mobility and Metro Transit in order to interact with our communities in the ways that we need to and deserve. I'm happy to answer questions at the end of the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Chesmo. It's oftentimes lost in the discussion just how essential paratransit service is for people to move around in the Twin Cities region. Thank you for being here. Next, I want to turn it over to Jonathan Weinhagen from the Minneapolis Chamber. And as people here know, the business community has been a significant leader on transit issues and understanding how essential it is to have a transit system both to connect to their workforce as well as to have an economically viable region for the Twin Cities. So I'll turn it over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Chair Duininck. Again, Jonathan Weinhagen, President and CEO of the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce. In addition to representing our nearly 1,500 members throughout the metro area, the Chamber is a downtown employer. And like many of our members, upwards of 50% of our employee population relies on transit to get to work every day. Our Chamber has a long history of supporting transit initiatives and investment throughout the region. We have been urging legislators to enhance our transit system because it brings people to work and attracts talent to our region. As the economy continues to globalize, our ability to attract talent to this region is paramount. Many of our employers are making investment decisions based on their access to talent. I work closely with my peers across the region to ensure our economic competitiveness. The MSP regional indicators are a dashboard developed in partnership with Greater MSP, the Minnesota Chamber, and many other partners, including the regional chambers, that look at benchmarking our region against 11 peer regions. The data suggests that we are behind our peers when it comes to net migration of talent who are 25 to 35 years old, a key indicator in closing our looming talent shortfall. Regions like Denver, who have made significant investments in transit, are significantly outpacing MSP as it relates to attracting the next generation of talent. Other important economic indicators include job access. Our region currently ranks third for percent of population living within 30 minutes of 100,000 jobs, and first in percent of population with commutes less than 30 minutes. The proposed bill puts our economic competitiveness at risk and is going to harm hundreds, if not thousands, of businesses who rely on transit to get their employees to work on time and to bring customers to their businesses. Like many of our members, I worry about my ability to retain 50% of my staff, including my new office manager who relies on our transit system to commute from Becker, Minnesota, if our transit system is forced to reduce service. Sustained investment in regional transit is an investment in people, it's an investment in jobs, and it's an investment in our economic future. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. A lot of times when I'm speaking to groups around the region, I need to remind folks that we have a very successful transit system that we're building on today. We were awarded with the 2015 award from American Public Transit Association for Metro Transit System of the Year Award, recognized amongst our peers. We have amazing on-time service and customer satisfaction. We do an excellent job in terms of the resources we have today, and a lot of that is due to the fact of the system that we've had to put in place over the last decade or more, which involves our partnership with the county's Transit Improvement Board. And so I want to turn over to Commissioner Peter McLaughlin to say a few words as well.
I'm Peter McLaughlin. I'm Hennepin County Commissioner and Chair of the county's Transit Improvement Board. I just want to step back a little bit here and talk a little bit about the system that we've got. So the two light rail lines are providing 27% of all the rides, just two lines. And then we've got the bus system, the workhorse that gets people where they need to go. And most of these rides are about getting to work or getting to school. So this isn't about a frill, something over on the side. It's an integral part of the transportation system, and we are not going to be able to build enough roads in this region to deal with what this economy needs. It is not going to happen. It can't happen. If you think about the carnage that occurred to the business community when 394 was built, if you start thinking about expanding 94, if you start thinking about expanding some of our other freeways, that's what we're looking at. You cannot solve our mobility problems and the needs of our economy with roads alone. In terms of the politics here, I just, it's amazing. I've been around a while. I was a member of the House Transportation Committee. And it's amazing, the LRT opponents, they're the biggest fans of the bus system you ever want to find the day LRT is being discussed. Oh my gosh, they're wringing their hands about the poor bus system, because that LRT is so horrible, but by golly, they believe in the bus system. Well then, the day comes when it's time to fund the bus system, can't find them. You can't find them. They're cutting the bus system. That's what Chair Duininck is talking about here. They kind of beat up on the LRT and say the buses are great, and then when it's time to fund the buses, they're not there. That is the reality. That's been the reality for years and years and years. And people need to face up to that. And so that's what we're facing here, is a retreat from investment in essential infrastructure, as you've heard from the business community. Finally, some of these bills that are being kicked around, they really are an attack on local government and local initiative. If you look around the country, it has been the regions that have stepped forward to make the investments in transit systems in Maricopa County, in Phoenix, in Dallas, which has more miles of LRT than any region in the United States of America. That would be in Texas. You've got Salt Lake City. You've got some of the other places that you might expect, Portland and Seattle. They're all using local sales tax to go forward, regional sales tax. And there's an attack on that. This legislature wants to control everything. Mother May I, can you please let us build a line? They want to control it, but they don't want to put any money into it. This is a prescription for economic decline. It is a prescription for, we have won in this region. We have outperformed the national economy on average since essentially after the Second World War because we made investments in infrastructure. We did freeways, we did airports, we did the mall, the Nicollet Mall. Those are the kind of investments, plus investments in education and higher education. The opponents here are trying to walk away from that investment. They think they can tax cut their way to economic prosperity. It's not going to happen. The fundamental building block is infrastructure for transportation, and we need to make that investment.
Well, thanks again, to all the men and women who have been here to speak and contribute to the press conference. I think it shows that there is going to be a significant impact to everybody in our community if something like the House or Senate bill were to become law, for example. The impacts to our disabled around the Twin Cities region, the impacts to the businesses, the impacts to the men and women who drive the buses and trains and service the equipment every day, to our workforce, as well as to everyone who serves or who takes transit themselves, as well as the population that oftentimes gets forgot about, people who do not take transit but rely on a smooth ride or a quicker movement of commerce around the region because we have a strong transit system here in this region. These impacts will be felt broadly. And I feel a sense of urgency to get to work on a transportation bill. That's a priority of mine. It's a priority of Commissioner Zelli and the Dayton administration. And so we're just here to try to move that debate forward because right now the legislative bills in front of us do not really do that. And so with that, maybe stand for some questions if there are any.
How do the House and Senate bills compare on this point?
The Senate bill is not as deep of a reduction. It's approximately, John would have the number for sure, I think it's 67 million in reductions. The House is actually doubles that. But they have a similar, what I've said to folks is watch what they've done in the past, which is either spend other people's money, such as CTIBs, to operate the service, or just flat out reduce them. The Senate does a little bit of both. It spends CTIBs funds on the transitway system, and as does the House. The House is a deeper reduction, deeper cut.
Legislators in both the House and the Senate cited the uncertainty about CTIB's future as one reason not to invest in transit. I wonder if the chair could comment about where that all stands and what the path forward is now for CTIB.
Well, as you probably know, it takes a vote of all 5 counties that entered into the Joint Powers Agreement to dissolve the Joint Powers Agreement. And Dakota County has resisted that. They have made unreasonable demands in terms of a payout on their way out the door after they got leased vehicle sales tax money on their way in the door. And so it's in all likelihood not going to happen. Having said that, we're still CTIB, and we made sure that we were going to still be CTIB at the beginning of this year. We set a budget for the whole year in the event that we didn't dissolve. That budget is in place. That budget will make investments in Southwest and other corridors that are moving forward, and we'll continue to do that. It's not the ideal path, but it is a clear path forward. And just as we have, since we were founded in 2008, We'll continue to make investments. We've invested almost $1 billion so far, and we're going to continue to expand the transit system.
In 2015, the legislature cut back $30 million for capital for Southwest and put it to operating for Metro Council and Metro Transit. Why can't we do the same thing again and just require CTIB to make up the difference between what you need and what is currently provided for regular route bus service?
I'd like to remind every group that I'm in front of, especially talking about Southwest, this is not about Southwest, this is about the entire system that we provide. But specifically to that project, the legislature has funded Southwest going back to 2009 across 2 governors' administrations. They've been participating in the process all along. We've engaged them as much as we possibly can. But to your question about using those funds are imposed by a local unit of government with their own taxing authority. And in partnership with the council, we have a plan to expand and enhance the transit network as it exists today. If that plan were to change, that would have to involve the input of Hennepin County, Ramsey County, and the other CTIB counties.
Let me just say, the legislature didn't impose that tax. We did. 5 counties. And it was designed to expand the transit system. We lowered the state's share of investment in these transitways, whether it be the Orange Line busway, Gateway busway, or the LRT projects. We lowered the state's share from 33% down to 10%. And the state, we keep running into that wall. The state can't come up with that, even though we've stepped forward and we're ready to move forward.
But hasn't the legislature...
The idea that somehow the state's gonna raid our tax dollars that we've raised from our taxpayers for a specific purpose, and we made a promise to those taxpayers. This is gonna be for expansion of the system. It isn't about garden variety bus service. That's not what we raised the tax for. Met Council and the state are responsible for that. And we've said we're gonna expand the system, and now they're trying to, it's a common ploy over here. The Republicans like to spend other people's money. Money they didn't raise, and that's what they're doing here.
But hasn't the CTIB been required to make a specific spending for a 1-year period in the past based on legislation?
They haven't, we fought that. We fought that.
So it could be done again.
Oh, they can do all sorts of high-handed things that really aren't right.
Any other questions?
Can you talk about the degree to which these cuts would affect different areas of the metro? As you know, the East Metro, the West Metro, suburbs versus the inner cities would be affected differently.
Yeah, I'll say 2 things about that. One, I want to highlight an unfortunate part about the House bill is it reduces our funding, but it actually gives an additional amount of funds for the suburban transit providers. Suburban transit providers are, an essential part of our transit network too. They provide about, I think, 10 to 15% of the regional transit rides. We provide over 85. Just for some comparison here. And I'm not an advocate of saying let's reduce their funds, but all of a sudden now at the expense of us, it looks like they may fund some of the suburban transit providers, which will again drive disparities between where people live and what kind of transit service they can expect. Secondly, if we have to, as an agency, look at what service we have to reduce, we always have to look at where the ridership is lowest. So if you live in a route that isn't as highly traveled, or if you live in a part of a region where you get maybe 2 or 3 buses a day, you potentially could lose those buses altogether. If you are used to 15 or 20-minute headways, you maybe have 30 or hour headways and that much longer of a wait for your transit. So we have to, the reductions are so deep it's hard to really know, but they would exacerbate the disparities. Certainly the East Metro, I believe, would be harmed quite a bit without looking at what the exact cuts would be.
Yeah, can I just add to that, because it's not suburban transit in general. The opt-outs are not evenly distributed across the suburbs. They're essentially in my county and in Dakota County.
South and west, yeah.
South and west. And so the East Metro and the North Metro are going to, they get harmed by the cuts to Metro Transit. So the suburbs get hurt by the Metro Transit cuts.
And that's been the pattern around transportation, unfortunately. It's become, how do we divide rural against metro, or how do we divide suburb against the urban area? And that's just something that we as a council would not support.
As I sat there that day where all these bills were coming across and listened to the abuse of power, they came up with a bill regarding redistricting. And I thought, well, anytime you do a redistrict, you're about to slice people's voting power. So how does that play into transportation? what is their plan or strategy, do you think, in that regard?
I'm not familiar with that proposal, so I'm not sure.
It's a bill up there.
Okay, take a look at it.
Where does this rank in the long list of battles you're fighting in budget and policy wise with the legislature?
It ranks front and center for us. I mean, the service that we provide every day, the people that would be impacted by this, you know, it's one thing to have a conversation about governance, who the Met Council members are, how they're selected. It's another thing to talk about, you know, how we interact with CTIB and the like, and that's an important conversation to have. But when the budget proposals have this amount of impact in people's lives, you're gonna see me, the council members, other advocates around the region really stand up and make as much noise as we can so people understand the impacts of those reductions. It's front and center, our basic operations needs to be preserved and enhanced.
How much do you think this is a seriously thought cut? How much do you think this is a negotiating gambit? Try to open with a steep thing so that you can arrive at smaller cuts or trade away cutting support for Southwest Light Rail or something like that in return for eliminating these cuts?
I've heard that from some legislators, and frankly, that's really frustrating. This isn't to an agency who gets impacted by those reductions, this isn't just an exercise. We have to plan for what our budget's going to be. We have to put a lot of hours and time and resources into figuring that out. It's going to play a role in this conversation around the region around what the fare policy is. So everything kind of in a way is together, and I understand that, and we have to be able to manage these policy challenges as they come, but to just say this is just about negotiating, I think that's, I wish that the legislature would take transit more serious.
Mr. Chair, could I touch on the rural versus metro as it applies to Commerce, please?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill.
Good morning. My name is Bill Goins. I am chair of the Minnesota Freight Advisory Committee. And what is freight? I just want to take a moment and say freight to me, and certainly your committee that deals with this, all modes of transportation, is the movement of commerce, the lifeblood of the state. It applies to some of the comments we've already heard about economic development, jobs, the blessing we have of industry clusters that some states would die to have one. We've got multiple, whether it's agriculture, whether it's healthcare. We have one of the largest associations of healthcare companies, over 700 in the state of Minnesota. So when the discussion comes up about rural and metro and roads and highways outstate versus within the metro, the discussion I like to have with people is the fact that when we talk about the metro and you're moving from Brainerd to Chicago or Brainerd to New York City, you're a company in Duluth trying to get to Memphis, Tennessee. You're coming through the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And if we have bottlenecks, in other words, commuters and commerce play in the same sandbox for the most part when it applies to roads and highways. So if we can do things to help move commuters, transit systems, that helps the movement of our lifeblood, commerce, here in the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Any last questions? All right, thank you, everybody.